The League of Women Voters of Santa Clara County presents the Santa Clara County Sheriff Candidate Forum live from the Cupertino Community Hall. And now for tonight's moderator, Eleanor Yick.
Good evening. My name is Eleanor Yick. I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Southwest Santa Clara Valley. But tonight I'm here as a representative of the Council of the Leagues of Women Voters of Santa Clara County, which includes all 5 leagues. I am also pleased to be the moderator for tonight's forum that is scheduled to last no longer than an hour and a half. The League is a nonpartisan organization that never endorses a candidate or a political party. As part of our mission to promote informed and empowered voters, we do schedule these candidate forums. We appreciate and wish to thank our 2 candidates for agreeing to participate in tonight's forum, and we thank you, our audience, for attending. The format for tonight's forum will be as follows. Each candidate will make a 1-minute opening statement. Next, the candidates will have 1.5 minutes to respond to questions from our audience in a rotating order. Audience members who wish to submit a question should do so on the index cards League members are handing out. If you need a card, raise your hand and one will be passed to you. When you have finished writing your question, please pass your card to the end of the row so the person on the end can raise their hand so it can be picked up. Questions should be of general interest as each candidate will respond. We have gathered questions from the audience and some questions have come in via email. Our question sorters in the back over here, Tracy Edwards and Veronica Tincher, are League members who will review and select questions that have been submitted. Duplicate questions or multiple questions on the same topic will be combined or rewritten. Each candidate, again, will have 1.5 minutes to respond to each question. Finally, the candidates will each have 1.5 minutes to end the forum by stating and responding to the following question. What question do you wish you had been asked tonight that you weren't, and why? To help keep us on track, we have our timekeepers, Ellen Wheeler and Bruce Kendall, who will signal each candidate with signs when their time is up at 1 minute, 30 seconds, and stop. In the interest of time and decorum, the League asks our audience and candidates to abide by the following agreed-upon standards for civil discourse. The questions, number 1, the questions to the candidate must be submitted on cards provided by the League or submitted via email. We request that no audience demonstration, clapping, etc. during the forum. Please turn off all electronic devices. If any other devices are used to record, we ask that the content be shared in its entirety to ensure that any remarks that are made are not taken out of context. This event is being filmed and will be shown on community channels throughout the county. The candidates have been asked to abide by the following standards. The moderator will enforce the time limits. After the moderator says, "Thank you, your time is up," please end the sentence that you're stating. Candidates will not interrupt each other. Candidates have brought no props to the forum, but can certainly have a notepad, pencil, and paper. The League has provided space for candidates and League materials to be displayed outside the forum room. Now I would like to introduce the candidates who are running for the office of Sheriff of Santa Clara County. There are 2 candidates running for 1 open position. First, I would like to introduce the incumbent, Sheriff Laurie Smith, whom I will refer to as Ms. Smith for the rest of the forum. Secondly, I would like to introduce our second candidate, Mr. John Hirokawa, whom I will refer to as Mr. Hirokawa for the rest of the forum. Welcome, and thank you for agreeing to participate in this forum. We are now ready to begin with opening statements. The candidates selected a card to determine the initial order. And again, each opening statement is limited to 1 minute. We will begin with Ms. Smith. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to the League of Women Voters. I'm really glad to be here in Cupertino, one of the cities that we provide law enforcement services for. We know that we provide exceptional services and very cost-effective services. My priorities: addressing mental health, safeguarding our most vulnerable. I've always been a strong advocate for victims and protecting our communities. Cupertino, there's been a 34% decrease in residential burglaries since 2017. Saratoga, a 47% decrease in residential burglaries in 2017. We respond to all calls and provide investigative services. I also want to promote accountability and integrity. I have a bio out there, and I brought some articles. I want tonight to really focus on the positive, what we are doing, what we plan to do, and some of our successes, so we can provide you the very best services for those that we serve.
Thank you. Mr. Hirokawa?
I would like to thank the League's Women Voters for hosting tonight in the city of Cupertino. I'm John Hirokawa, running against a 2-decade incumbent, Laurie Smith. I'm a 37-year veteran of the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office, and I'm running to bring trust, transparency, and reform. I will instill trust by working and collaborating with all communities in the county and conversing with you. I will bring transparency to our jails and enforcement bureaus by bringing outside organizations to work both with the staff and the inmates. I will bring reform by creating a system of independent oversight to take the politics out of policing. I'm not a politician, I'm a public servant. I want to bring fresh ideas, a fresh start, and to get that change to the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office. I've served here in your community and have received awards for Deputy of the Year, Optimist Club Deputy of the Year. And I continue to volunteer in this community of Cupertino with leadership awards and camps. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will move on to our audience questions. Again, each response is limited to 1.5 minutes, except the first one. The first one is really just a very simple letter grade that you're going to give. So this one we'll just do like in 30 seconds. So the first question, and we'll begin with you, Mr. Hirokawa. This is a very brief question, and I'm requesting a one-word response. If you gave a letter grade to the sheriff's office, what would it be?
D.
Pardon me?
D.
D.
D as in David.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
A.
A, thank you. Second part of that question, and I'll keep the same order because these three go together. What changes are needed in the sheriff's office to make it an A, Mr. Hirokawa?
Independent oversight, both of the Jail Custody Bureau and the Enforcement Bureau.
Right. This one you can have a longer amount of time if you want, 1.5.
In order to keep the community trust, for the deputies and the men and women that protect you out in the street, they have to have your trust in your cooperation. With independent oversight, which I've been advocating before the death of Michael Tyree and have been advocating since the death of Michael Tyree at board meetings, there needs to be that independent oversight. It's been long overdue. Michael Tyree died over 3 years ago. And on the sheriff's website, it talks about how they want independent oversight, but there's been no movement from the current incumbent, Ms. Smith. And so for that, that's my first order of priority. In order for them to do their job, the men and women that protect you, they need to have that trust. And that trust can be lost in a split second. In order to gain your trust in the community trust, it could take years. And so without that independent oversight, that's one of my first priorities, to make it an A.
Thank you very much. Ms. Smith?
So I gave it an A, and the reason I gave it an A is I think we have the finest deputies and our professional staff of any law enforcement agency anywhere. We do a great job. We are highly appreciated. We're in Cupertino now, but by the cities that we serve. We know that we provide a good service, really, and a high-quality service at a very economical cost, if you will. No one wants the cheapest law enforcement, but they want the best law enforcement, and if it happens to be more cost-effective, that's even better. We're real proud of the work that our detectives do in working on residential burglaries. We see a rise in a lot of the crimes in many cities, and I'm proud of the work that we do every day. I mentioned the decrease in residential burglaries in Cupertino and Saratoga. That's something we're proud of, and I think it's because of the strong work that we do for the community. I think that leadership is very important. We have built an organization that I'm proud of, that the community is proud of. The Board of Supervisors, I have 4 of the 5 Board of Supervisors have endorsed, and they have endorsed me for sheriff. In the city of Saratoga, I have 3 of the 5 council members. In the city of Cupertino, I have 4 of the 5 council members. In Los Altos Hills, our other city, I have 5 of the 5 council members. They know us, they know our work, they trust the leadership that we provide, the quality of services that we provide, and I'm really proud of the agency every day.
Thank you very much. Before we go any further, Mr. Hirokawa, would you move your microphone in a little bit? Some people are having problems hearing you. Thank you. Okay, we're going to change the order now. We'll begin with Ms. Smith. Senate Bill 1421, a police transparency bill, would begin to unwind the confidentiality law passed 4 decades ago by opening up records from investigations of officer shootings and other major force incidences, along with confirmed cases of sexual assault and lying while on duty. First part, did you support SB 1421? If yes, why? And if no, why not? Let's begin with you, Ms. Smith.
So I did not take a position on that bill. However, I do have some big concerns. Number one, I think peace officer records should be confidential, probably with the exception of what you've laid out. We recently had a big issue in the sheriff's office of texting, and I was really glad when the information finally became public. I have some articles out there, but I believe those that are racist, misogynist, and every other kind of evil texter that we've had in this organization, I believe that they should be terminated. And I have been at really a big loss on this because until they filed documents in court, I was not able to talk about it. I was not able to show the true nature of some of our disciplines. So what I really believe is I believe that bad cops shouldn't be in this business, particularly when they have views of hate. And I was really glad when all of that information recently came to light, but my hands were tied prior to that. So I believe that when someone tells something that's not true, a law enforcement official should be able to respond and correct the record. And I was only able to do that in this. And my opponent believed that the discipline was too severe, and he testified to that at an arbitration hearing. And that's public, and that is also referenced in some of the articles that I brought today.
Thank you. Mr. Hirokawa?
So I was in favor of Senate Bill 1421 in regards to transparency, and that's what my campaign's built on. Without the community trust, again, you don't have, the men and women cannot do their job day to day. And that's why I'm for independent oversight, independent of the elected sheriff or the police chief. There needs to be community trust, mutual trust, even in our marginalized communities, especially in those communities, and for everybody in this county. Without that, you don't have qualified or effective law enforcement. In regards to the textings, the sheriff is sitting next to me right now, where I've called for complete disclosure of all of the informations on the textings and the records. She's just referring to a little bit. And she hasn't released everything, because if she released everything, the record would show John Hirokawa was about due process, about how these people were going through the system. She should be thanking me right now in order for her to have fired or demoted the one person, because if it wasn't for John Hirokawa, who kept on bringing up, you're violating the law, you're violating due process. Eventually she made a correction and had to go to court. All that paperwork would be disclosed, but she's not going to disclose it because it then clarifies exactly what happened. And that's what transparency is about, and that's what independent oversight. If we had independent oversight, there would be no question about who did what and when.
Thank you. Now, the B part of this question. Now that SB 1421 has been passed and signed by the governor, what will you do to ensure its successful implementation, Mr. Hirokawa?
Again, once I take office on January 1st, 2019, I would be advocating strongly for independent oversight. That independent oversight, those consultants, and working with the community and working with the rank and file to ensure that we abide by SB 1421. That's about what's transparency. All the stakeholders need to be at the table, and we need to listen to them. Just filling in the seat does nothing if nobody is listening and nobody is taking to heart what SB 1421 is about. No questions. It's about transparency. And without that, we are not going to progress as a department in the sheriff's office. The sheriff just said she gives her department an A. That indicates to me there's no room for improvement. There's a lot of room for improvement, and that's what John Hirokawa wants to do, is bring progressive reforms to that sheriff's office to include use of force, how we deal with racial profiling, how we deal with the rank and file in regards. All the rank and file want is to be treated fairly, to be treated equally, and have the same due process rights just because they may be a political opponent of the incumbent and be treated differently. That's what I tried to stop. That's what I kept on pointing out. You're violating the law, you're violating due process, and now, for political reasons and the political sound bites of the incumbent.
Thank you. And Ms. Smith?
So what he said on the I'm glad I got a part B. What he said on the last question was factually not accurate. Everything's been released that legally could be released on the discipline that he's referencing. And he also said that he wanted us to follow the law and wanted just the due process. Due process was perfect. It was a discipline that went to an independent arbitrator, and it was upheld. Let me tell you what the arbitrator said. He said the string of received texts from peers and subordinates also contained derogatory and occasionally violent, sexually explicit statement and images regarding women, Asians, Asian American, African Americans, Mexicans, gay men. Some of these texts related coworkers above and below the rank of the grievant and mentioned them by name. This is a quote from the arbitrator's decision. Under Sheriff Hirokawa testified that he believed grievance penalty was too severe, where there were 5 people involved, 4 were terminated. The person that he testified on behalf of, where he said the penalty was too severe, was merely demoted. I recused myself from the investigation and trusted that he would do the right thing in this instead of protect his political buddy that has spent a lot of money on his campaign.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to the next question, and we'll actually start with Ms. Smith. Santa Clara County has a sanctuary policy of not cooperating with ICE. Do you support that policy? Why or why not?
Yes, I do support that policy, and in fact, I was part of, in 2010, I participated on a task force where we developed that policy, and we were one of the first agencies that really had a tough policy in place. In 2017, the County of Santa Clara sued the Trump administration over his unconstitutional immigration policies, and I submitted a declaration in support of that action. I was also quoted by Attorney General Becerra in talking about immigration and how we really need the trust of the community, and how sometimes these unconstitutional immigration policies can really, really hurt the trust that we build in the community. We also formed within the Sheriff's Office just recently an immigration fraud unit, and this is a unit that will investigate and hold accountable those that prey on immigrants, represent themselves that I can solve your immigration issues if you give me so much money. We have a unit that specifically deals with that. A lot of them are undocumented from Mexico, but we're finding more and more undocumented or people who have concerns from Vietnam.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hirokawa?
I'm currently for the current jail detainer policy, as with, I believe, though, it does us no right in regards to our community when we start separating families based on their immigration status. We need to protect that immigration families, dreamers, DACA. That's a clear message from John Hirokawa. In a recent forum, just back in May, for the Republican Women's Caucus, the current incumbent here pointed to John, asking the same question, and gave me credit, and said her only answer was, well, he's the one that actually helped write it and helped implement it. And then when it came to me, I stood up before that audience and told them, yes, that's true. So again, I'm for rights of immigrants. My family face severe discrimination because I'm third generation. They were interned, both sides of my families were interned in the Japanese internment camps. My mother's side from LA and Manzanar, my father's side at Tule Lake, and they lost their farm. The fact of the matter is, everybody should be treated equally and fairly. We should protect the rights because this country was built on strong immigration. And to do otherwise and not do the humanitarian thing and respecting these people as they come into their country and working hard is a disservice to our country.
Thank you. Our next question. What are the three most significant things you want to accomplish during your term as sheriff? And we'll begin with you, Mr. Hirokawa.
I believe there needs to be a total evaluation from top to bottom in regards to the sheriff's office. I've called for peer-to-peer, peer-to-superior evaluations, and then from there, we need to know there are 1,800 employees in the sheriff's office with a budget of about $350 million. That organization needs to be scaled down from the top down to the bottom for more men and women to be patrolling the streets and protecting the inmates in the jail. There needs to be a scale down. There's been too much concentration on the administrative hierarchy in the sheriff's office. I believe in scaling that down and bringing it down. And then a full evaluation. The rank and file members need to participate in regards to those evaluations. What do they think about their supervisors? What do they think about their lieutenants? What do they think about their captains? Are they making decisions based on short-term solutions or long-term solutions? And then you go from hiring into the training. Those are the issues that I believe needs to be addressed in the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office. I also want to do a collaboration with the chiefs in regards to protecting the victims of domestic violence, sexual assaults, sexual harassment, elder abuse, and child molest. These are the most vulnerable people in our community, and they need to be protected. They need to have advocacy and collaboration. The Sheriff's Office needs to do those things with the YWCA.
Thank you very much. Ms. Smith?
So I mentioned briefly in my opening some of the things that I think are really, really important on services that we provide. Number one is addressing mental health and homelessness. We see it everywhere. I am a strong advocate of partnering a deputy with a clinician to handle calls, mobile mental health. We have mobile mental health in this county, and I want to extend it further. Homelessness, too. We recently had the Hope Village, and we assisted in finding a good, safe place for this homeless encampment that was clean and had restroom facilities. Also, protecting our most vulnerable, including elder fraud. We have a unit that addresses elder fraud. Human trafficking, whether it's labor trafficking or sex trafficking, and just being a real strong advocate for victims. Protecting our communities, reducing crime. We're very fortunate in this county that we live, the three cities we serve have some of the lowest crime rates in the state. Also, Santa Clara County is one of the lowest in Santa Clara County, but we can lower our rates. Also, integrity. It's not enough to say you have integrity. You have to live an honest and ethical life, and not work for special interests and try to get support by making promises. I work with the police chiefs.
Thank you. The next question, and we actually begin with Ms. Smith. The Sheriff's Office provides law enforcement for unincorporated areas and some cities, such as Cupertino. How would you work in those areas to meet their needs?
So because we're the sheriff's office, we actually have countywide jurisdiction, but that's what we do every day. And I mentioned it also when you ask about the letter grade for the sheriff's office. The cities that we provide services for really are happy with the level of services. We interact very often with the city manager and with the city council. And we not only do just responding to and investigating calls, but we also do a lot of proactive enforcement, whether it's addressing a burglary problem that we have in a certain area, whether it's the specialized units that we have, and we have several specialized units in the sheriff's office that we work in conjunction with the other police chiefs, and we've got just a great partnership there. Unincorporated is the same. We have people assigned to rural crimes. In our South County part of Santa Clara County, we have a rural crime unit. In our high-tech areas, we have a high-tech unit that we work in conjunction with other agencies. But I believe it's just good old-fashioned law enforcement police work, working in partnership with the community and doing the directed enforcement that will focus on some of the particular crimes that we have, and I mentioned several of them already, and that's why we have people assigned that become experts in those areas so we can better address it and provide the very best safety and security we can for all of those we serve throughout the county, not just in our jurisdiction.
Thank you. Mr. Hirokawa?
So my campaign, again, is about trust, transparency, and reform, especially with the collaboration and communication with you and our other partners in law enforcement throughout the other cities and throughout the other counties. Without that direct communication with you and the rank and file, how do we come up with viable solutions and how to protect you better? Without hearing from you, not knowing exactly what your concerns are, then how do we then address those issues? I believe it's been at least 3 terms where the current incumbent hasn't reached out to the community, has sent out her staff, not herself, to talk to you in regards to what your concerns are. She hasn't communicated with the rank and file. Guess what? The best solutions come from the rank and file. The women and men that protect you in the community, they're the ones doing the job. They're the ones that come up with the input. Without listening to them, then no viable solution will come forward. In regards to promises. My promise to the rank and file, and the only promise to the rank and file, would be, I will listen to you. We will be at a table together. We're not sitting on opposite ends. We are together in this to try to make the best effective way to serve you. And that's what I'm trying to do, is instill that. After 20 years under the same administration, there needs to be change. And with that, there's hope. If there's change, there's hope. You shouldn't be scared about change.
Thank you. Next question, and we'll begin with you, Mr. Hirokawa. What's your view on the use of tasers in the jail? And explain your thinking.
So I'm against tasers in the jail. There's no proof, there's no data to show that tasers will make the jails a lot safer. In fact, there was just a taser death in Santa Clara County that was reported. So, again, that's a confined area. 35% of the inmates in our jail are seriously mentally ill. Here's the other thing. Most of those inmates in our jail are suffering from some type of health issue. When you start introducing tasers, then you put everybody more at risk in regards to a taser death. It's a confined setting. The sheriff did a presentation back in May of last year showing that there was epidemic assaults in the jail. That wasn't true, because the next presentation she did 2 months later, they're saying how the assaults were down compared to other jails. And then finally in December of last year, she makes a pitch that actually the data was inconclusive in regards to whether the assaults are up or down. Why did she ask for tasers in the jail when her data was flawed? My thing is, there's no empirical proof or data that says that tasers will be introduced to the jail and make everybody else safe. It's a fallacy. So, I'm against it. I see no reason to have tasers in the jail.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
So I'm in favor of tasers both in the jail and in our patrol units. I don't propose using tasers without having looked at all of the research, and I'm committed to having a strong policy, strong training, procedures that go with it. I actually believe that tasers can actually increase the resolution or shorten the amount of time for a resolution of a critical incident and reduce injuries both to staff, to those that we encounter, and to the greater community. The policy and procedures and training would have defined uses, specified times, and we're one of the very few law enforcement agencies that doesn't use tasers. The technology has come a long way from when they were first introduced, maybe 30 years ago. I'm a big supporter in making sure that our deputies have every tool that they need to be safe, to keep the public safe, and to keep the person that they're interacting with safe. That, coupled with strong policies, procedures, and training, it's a great tool for law enforcement. That's why the majority, I can't think of any law enforcement agencies off the top of my head that don't have tasers, and the vast majority of jails in Santa Clara County also have tasers. It's another less lethal tool that we can use.
Thank you. Next question, and we'll start with Ms. Smith. How will you handle complaints of sexual harassment, and what policies will you implement to prevent sexual harassment?
So not only do we have strong policies within the Sheriff's Office, but the county also has strong policies of sexual harassment. We will follow up on all of those completely to make sure that they're investigated thoroughly, completely, and then we communicate also with the victim to make sure that the victim is safe at the time when they make the allegation. We've seen what's happening right now in the U.S. I think it's a travesty. I don't believe that someone should be on our Supreme Court if they have that kind of a history, and I believe the woman. I am a strong supporter of women's rights, victims' rights, and so it should be thoroughly investigated, protect the victim, policies and procedures, and ongoing training, which we have. We actually have a very low incident of sexual harassment and discrimination allegations within the Sheriff's Office, but when we do, we take it real seriously. And I'm going back now to the texting. Some of the comments of violence against women and violence against inmates that were part of this texting scandal was horrible. That was something that the allegation was sustained, the person was demoted, and my opponent believed that it was too severe. There is no room. Anyone who has an allegation of sexual harassment that's confirmed should be terminated.
Thank you. Mr. Hirokawa?
So, the Me Too movement has been a long time, over a decade, by Ms. Burke. And that message for the Me Too movement is about not only protecting the victim, but listening to the victim. You have to listen, and listen to the needs, and then protect, and then believe, and then investigate. If you, on the premise that you don't, it could be false, then you get nowhere. That's what John Hirokawa is about. It's about collaborating with other organizations like the YWCA, AKI, Community Solutions, trying to collaborate with them to, what we know is the vast majority of domestic violence victims, sexual assault victims, it's unreported. They don't feel comfortable reporting it. I feel that, look, the sheriff likes to make up her own facts and doesn't believe in playing in the rules. Just like when she removed the sexual harassment complaint of the victim's statement out of the internal affairs records when she was a person of power. That's what this movement's about, protecting the victim against people of power who can influence their career. Removing that tape and then self-admitting removing the tape and then saying it was procedurally correct, it was ethical, is beyond me, and why people have not paid attention in regards to the Mercury News article in regards to Tale of the Missing Tape. To listen to the tape and then for it to go missing before she answered any questions.
Thank you. Our next question, we'll start with you, Mr. Hirokawa. What are your budget priorities, or what would your budget priorities be? And if you had another $1 million, how would you invest it?
First off, if I had $1 million, I would hire more street deputies to protect you, not another captain. The second thing is, the sheriff has been recently criticized in regards to her overspending over $150 million over budget. And the county exec has said, if this person was reporting to her, a department head, their job would be at risk, but he can't do anything about it because she's an elected. It's the mismanagement of the county funds, your taxpayer dollars. She'll say how this is about jail reforms. It has nothing to do with jail reforms. It's about how the jail reforms are being implemented, when the jail reforms are being implemented. That's what this is about in regards to the over expenditures and the deficit that have placed this county at risk in regards to other services that can be offered to the citizens of this county, health and human services, the social services in this county. Don't list, those are serious allegations in regards to being so over budget, and then to make the excuse of the reforms. Do you realize this county, since the death of Michael Tyree, has spent $350 million in less than 3 years just on jail reforms? The 150 is on top of that, on top of her $350 million budget. This is total mismanagement and not paying attention, and then trying to say that the county is okay with it.
Thank you. Ms. Smith.
So the report he's referring to is flawed, and his representations are not correct. They will be making revisions to the budget, but basically the sheriff's office has always been under budget. Even the services that we provide to Cupertino, we are always under budget. My opponent forgets to say that he was the chief of the Department of Correction. When he retired, it was a big mess, and the jail is really only a portion of what we do. We had 2 law firms that were reviewing what we did internally, and they filed lawsuits right after he left, or just while he was still here. We've been making reforms to correct what was going on in the jail, and the budget was spent with full knowledge and authority of the county executive and the chief operating officer. During the time of all the problems we had, he hid, he froze, he didn't do what he was supposed to do, and then he retired to really avoid the reforms and the litigation. Another unanticipated cost was when he retired, his payout was close to $500,000, and that also wasn't budgeted for, his payout and his salary for that year. And so we are spending money for the reforms at the direction of the county executive. The report that he's referencing, we hadn't seen before it was released, and neither had the county exec, so, okay.
Thank you. Our next question, a little on the long side. Law enforcement is not a popular career path in the STEM-focused Santa Clara County high schools. What initiatives do you propose to attract the younger generation to join law enforcement and help keep our communities safe? We'll begin with you, Ms. Smith.
I didn't hear the first part of the question, I'm sorry.
Law enforcement is not a popular career path in STEM-focused Santa Clara County high schools. What initiatives do you propose to attract the younger generation to join law enforcement and help keep our communities safe?
You know, we're real fortunate in this county because we do have the technology, and that does make a real challenge for us, but we do some real proactive recruiting. In the high schools, we do training programs actually for the kids. We hope that attracts them in. We have a cadet program also. But one of the big pitches that I make in law enforcement is that we really need the STEM kind of kids to go into law enforcement. So many of the crimes right now are being committed using a computer, whether it's child pornography, whether it's stealing money, whether it's bank accounts, whether it's fraud using the internet. And I mentioned that the Sheriff's Office has an A rating in my mind. We have some very, very technologically great people within the Sheriff's Office that understand cell phones and a lot of the technology. So the pitch that I always make is we do have that kind of technology need in law enforcement, and if you come to us, you'll actually be really doing a lot of good for the community in using those skills. Unfortunately, we don't pay enough, and it's very difficult to live in this county. That's another one of our challenges, but we're real proud of the ethnic breakdown that we have in the Sheriff's Office. We make a real effort at diversity, and we've been pretty successful, and we're always trying to get kids interested.
Thank you. Mr. Hirokawa?
Well, Eleanor, I'm going to disagree with you. I think it's a very noble profession, and I think most of the young people, especially the millenniums, understand that it is. I believe that, although I believe we have to make vast improvements in regards to the diversity of how that sheriff's office looks, in regards to having different ethnic groups, religious and sexual orientation involved in the hiring process. Guess who the best recruiters are for the sheriff's office? It's the rank and file. If they're happy, the morale's happy, guess what? That resonates to the community. And my first order of business is not just to handpick certain people who I like, but to have the variety of different ethnicities, religions, ethnic people in our department going out and actively recruiting to create more diversity in our department. Do you realize that Laurie Smith has been almost number 2 and number 1 in power for over 28 years? She had certain opportunities that were given to her by Sheriff Gillingham when he promoted her to the number 2 position. That was 28 years ago. There's been no woman in the number 2 or number 3 spot under her administration. That's 20 years. Let's have a change. Let's give somebody else a chance to create the diversity that we need in our department. Recruiting starts with morale, and morale has to be improved both on the custody side and on the street enforcement side. Those men and women are looking for change. Let's do it.
Thank you. The next question is a 2-part question, and we'll start with Mr. Hirokawa. And could I, yes, make sure you have that microphone really close to you. Okay, the first part. How will you improve mental health screening of newly booked inmates? And how will you appropriately house those inmates found to have mental health issues?
So, this is a subject dear to my heart because before I retired in 2016, I created and wrote the concept papers with a jail consultant in regards to our mental health teams in the jail. The county jails were down to 1 psychiatrist for over 1,000 seriously mentally ill inmates. Today, I believe they're almost what we call mental health teams. I believe they have at least 10 mental health teams with a psychiatrist, psychologist, mental health counselor, and a deputy who are going around the jails and visiting those seriously mentally ill inmates to improve the conditions. But in regards to the booking area, it was again, John Hirokawa was proposing telemedicine within the jails. Very expensive to have a psychiatrist, an MD in the booking area, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, especially during the down periods of time between 2 and maybe 7 o'clock in the morning. There needs to be telemedicine. That's what I was trying to bring. So in regards to the new jail, it was John Hirokawa with the county exec that was proposing and coming up with the concepts of the new jail, which included 2 mental health floors and reentry floors. That new jail was supposed to be built by the end of 2019 because the current incumbent called it the Taj Mahal and wanted to scale it down. The projection date to open up that new jail is in 2023, and it's doubled its budget. Originally, she was trying to save money.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
So mental health screening, I mentioned in my opening that I thought that mental health is one of the big issues. We do have a significant number of people in the jail that really don't belong in jail that have serious mental health issues. There's a lot of homeless with mental health and other substance abuse issues. And it is really a big issue. You mentioned screening. We have screening at intake. We have improved the confidentiality and the sections of it. We have teams within the jail, multi-service deputies that are specially trained to deal with people with mental health. The amount of training that we've done in the jail as far as the crisis intervention training dealing with mental health, we have a good number of our staff fully trained in those 40-hour classes in how to deal with people with mental health. We've also implemented a new classification system, and that's a system, the classification takes all of the parameters of the person coming in to make the decision on where to house that person, where the appropriate place is. We've increased the number of mental health professionals. I think that it concerns me that mental health has become, the jails have become a place where people with mental health is, and I think there needs to be a wider statewide solution to mental health.
Thank you. Our next question, why do you want to be sheriff or continue being the sheriff? Ms. Smith?
I think that we have a lot left to do in the organization. I think that we need to continue to build on our successes, find innovative and creative ways to deal with the problems facing our communities. That's a dynamic question of what can we do, how can we improve. We need to make sure that we focus on quality of life. That means whether it is in the jail, which is only a portion of our operation, or on the streets. What can we do as a team to make sure that we make improvements and that we never are status quo, that we're continuing to make improvements, we're continuing to look at things. We're currently surveying within the organization, and we also pay a lot of attention to the surveys that the cities do on what the residents expect of the sheriff's office. We also build so many relationships with communities within all of the organizations and all of the areas. I am out most of the time with organizations that represent a segment, whether it's geography or it's ethnic based, and have really, really a lot of support from many, many community organizations. And I think it's just continued quality improvement, not being happy with where we are, but what can we do better? And that's something that we're always striving to do. And yes, I gave ourselves an A, and I think we've got that, but we're always looking for what can we do better and more efficiently.
Thank you. Mr. Hirokawa?
20 years of sheriff, 20 years, 2 decades. I think she had plenty of time to make the improvements that she wanted to do. Let's give somebody else a chance. Let's have some change here. She talks about running and hiding. There's been no explanation since I left. 2017, April, 48-year-old male committed suicide by jumping out of a second tier at Elmwood. May of 2017, Edward Davis Jr. killed, murdered in the Santa Clara County Jail at Elmwood. There's been no explanation. June 22nd, 2017, 35-year-old low-level offender committed suicide at the Elmwood Jail. January 2018, 72-year-old hung himself at the Elmwood Jail. June 30th, 2018, male jumped from the second tier at Elmwood. September 2018, female died of an overdose at the Elmwood Jail. Summer of 2018, 53-year-old inmate found dead in his cell. That hasn't been explained. We think, the rumors is that he probably lay dead in medical distress for almost 14 to 16 hours, no aid. Andy Hogan, the latest one.
Mr. Hirokawa, could I ask you to relate those to why you want to be sheriff? Okay.
So these things need to stop. We're talking about life and death decisions. These decisions, as we move forward, place inmates and staff at risk. Under the current, that's why I want to be sheriff. The sheriff won't tell you, but the jail experts told her and her command staff, do not rush to implement reforms. You put people's lives at risk.
Thank you. Next question, and we'll start with Mr. Hirokawa. 2 parts. How would you improve internal affairs investigations? How would you improve the handling of evidence?
So again, independent oversight, 3 years, on the sheriff's website that she wanted independent oversight. No movement from the independent elected to do anything about independent oversight, to oversee the disciplines and the operations of both the custody side and the jail side. No advocacy other than saying to the Board of Supervisors, let's see what you come up with. And Joe Simiti and the rest of the board are working towards that goal. But they have no control over the independent elected sheriff, as with her budget, as the county exec illuminated to. So again, it's that. That's how you create community trust in an ombudsman program for the low-level complaints, to have it open so they can look at issues when you come about how the demeanor of the deputies in the jail or out in enforcement, to track those types of complaints. There needs to be community trust. And without that, you get nowhere. And that's how you improve the internal affairs system.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
So we have deputies and sergeants assigned to the internal affairs unit, and we are very progressive in how we handle internal affairs in the manner in which you can make complaints. It's really open. It allows people to come forward and make complaints. We also have the advantage now that we've implemented recently of new camera systems within the jail and body-worn cameras, and we've had for quite a while the car cameras, but those are tremendous aids in doing the investigations that we do, and in fact that has really helped a lot in shortening investigations, because you see actually what happened. And so I think that has been a big plus. I was a strong advocate for cameras in the jail. In fact, I was frustrated with the slowness of the county and actually went to Costco and bought some first sets of cameras to make sure that we would have that. As far as evidence, we have good evidence systems. I don't think there's been any hint that our evidence systems are flawed. Again, we're always looking for better ways that we can do it. But we do provide quality investigations. We hold those who are found to have committed any level of misconduct. We have different levels of disciplines, whether it's a letter of reprimand, a demotion, termination, or, thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Next question, and we'll begin with Ms. Smith. Specifically, what are the 3 accomplishments you are most proud of during your career with the Sheriff's Department?
So I think one of the things that I'm most proud of is we struggled as a sheriff's office for many years when the Board of Supervisors lost trust in the sheriff, and we separated at that time. We now have the jails back, but we've built an exemplary law enforcement agency. I'm really proud of the men and women, and we hire well, we train well, and we make sure that people are accountable for the level of service that they provide. Number 2, our training academy. We used to send our academy recruits to another location. We now have a regional academy, both for custody and for enforcement, that all agencies send to us. We're recognized by the state of having exceptional training. We're in the process right now of building an emergency vehicle operation course. And I'm also very proud of the work that we've done with people with mental health and with the community, how interacting with the community, working with the community, getting input from the community, and our partners, our stakeholder partners, whether it's the police chiefs, and I was formerly president of the local police chiefs association or the state sheriffs association, and I served as president of the State Sheriff's Association in the past, representing the 58 elected sheriffs. I think it's those partnerships and working with those agencies that really I'm proud of.
Thank you. Mr. Hirokawa?
So, quote, John strives to maintain cultural sensitive principles and standards and treats people fairly, humanely, and with the utmost respect. Laurie Smith, quote, on my evaluation. During the past several years, John has been working 2.5 executive positions, under sheriff, chief of corrections, assistant chief of corrections, and puts in countless hours. John Hirokawa in community meetings has been praised in regards to how he listens, collaborates and listens to the community, and has been the most responsive person on that staff. To include, you had over 6 months the Blue Ribbon Commission that was charged with looking at the status of the reforms, to make recommendations for the reforms in the jail after the death of Michael Tyree, chaired by retired Judge LaDoris Cordell. They came to me and said, John, you have been the most collaborative, transparent person that we've dealt with in the Sheriff's Office staff, and we're looking for you to make that leadership change. Those are the things, those relationships that I have built over the years, serving you as a public servant, listening to you as a public servant, coming up with solutions as a public servant to you to keep you safe in your homes and to keep the inmates safe in the jails, has been my best accomplishments, and I feel very proud. I've received, under Jim McAtee, who used to be the director of the Human Relations Commission, awarded me with rewards for my work in human and civil rights.
Thank you. Our next question, we'll begin with Ms. Smith. What is the Sheriff's Department doing or planning to do to promote anti-bias sensitivity training among sheriff's deputies?
So training is one of our strong suits within the Sheriff's Office. We are doing a lot of training. I was going to see if I could find the list of training classes that we have, but we have a number: cultural sensitivity, gender bias, and I'm not sure I'm getting all of those names right. Mindfulness training, but training and modeling and accountability, I think, is really important. I might have skipped some of the training classes that we're doing, but we also have a very, very diverse organization. The Sheriff's Office, we currently speak 25 different languages. We have our department, we have 17% African American, 17% Asian Americans, which is lower than the population. African Americans 5%, Hispanics 35%, and then our organization really is only 34% white, non-Hispanic, and we have only about 29% women. We need to really, really focus on hiring women, but I think that training, diversity, and being accountable to the public is really what we're focusing on.
Thank you.
Can you restate the question?
What is the Sheriff's Department doing or planning to do to promote anti-bias sensitivity training among sheriff's deputies?
First, in regards to diversity and training, it's not enough to have a seat at the table. The seats must be open to everyone. It's not enough to have a voice in the discussion. The voices have to be heard. And when those voices are heard, well, maybe one day you will have somebody of diversity and ethnicity at the top spot in the sheriff's office. There's never been an elected Asian in the state of California for sheriff. So it's listening, it's conversing. The training, again, the county has spent $350 million on jail reforms, which includes training. It's not just enough to check off the box. I've done the implicit bias training. I've done the cultural training, cultural sensitivity training. I've sent them to these places, Museum of Tolerance. It's not just enough to check off the box. Those are your tax dollars. There needs to be an evaluation of the training. What's working, what's not working. Because the fact of the matter is, it didn't stop. The racial textings, that attitude, that culture did not stop with this mere firing somebody. That's taking care of a few. And what hasn't been discussed is, it's still within the organization. How you go about weeding out that organization needs to start at the top with the example from the top sheriff elected. And only you can make that change. The evaluation is very key in regards to that training. When I become sheriff, there's going to be a complete evaluation of all the training and the money and who's receiving that training.
Thank you. Our next question, we'll begin with you, Mr. Hirokawa. What will you do to retain employees?
Well, first, You have to listen to them. First, you have to engage not only the rank and file and their union representatives and not turn them away over 4 to 6 years since the last election. So, in order to improve morale, I've already promised them. The only promises that I've made to those rank and file members or any individuals were fully disclosed in those interviews, both with all of the unions. And the first thing I said, if I get elected in November, I will set up meetings immediately with all of the stakeholders, including the rank and file and you. I will be traveling to every city, Palo Alto, to Milpitas, to San Jose, to Gilroy, every single city to engage you, not just during the election time, but during the course of my 4 years in tenure. That needs to change, and in order to do that, you need to engage and you need to listen to the rank and file. And that's why I have the vast support of the 10 retired police chiefs in this county. They've worked with the incumbent, they've worked with me. They know who will collaborate, and they know who will listen. And they believe in John Hirokawa as the Deputy Sheriff's Association and 10 other law enforcement agencies and Crime Victims United. It's about listening and then trying to come up with viable solutions and listening to your concerns.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
So I haven't seen the numbers recently on our retention numbers, but I believe that they're very good when you look at the people who hire on and stay with us. We actually have been successful in people coming from other law enforcement agencies to our sheriff's office. I think we're recognized for excellence. Morale is something that I think is very important, and we have to all be together on a common purpose and not working against each other, because a very small number of people can create distrust within the organization, and eliminating their offensive rhetoric and talk and I think goes a long way in improving morale. I have the support of the Correctional Deputies Association, and endorsements are really important because it really shows who has a lot of trust and confidence in you. And I know as a result of some of my opponent's conduct, the largest police officer organization in California, PORAC, actually pulled their endorsement from him because of his conduct. So did San Jose Police Officers Association, and so did Sunnyvale Police Officers Association. They did not want to be affiliated with someone who would protect people from discipline that espoused a great amount of hate. I think in our organization, if we can work on those people who provide this level of hatred, we'll be better all around.
Thank you. Our next question, and we'll begin with Ms. Smith. There have been accusations of corruption in the department. What are you doing, or what will you do to prevent corruption? And how will you be personally involved?
You know, I don't know of allegations of corruption in the organization. If this is something new, please bring it to my attention. I don't know what this is referencing. I don't know where the question came from. However, we've talked about internal affairs a lot. Not only do we have internal affairs if there is wrongdoing, but when you're talking about corruption, you're talking about criminal activity. And our detectives are some of the finest detectives around. If there's ever any hint of corruption, then I would actually take serious action. The only thing that I can think of right now is I believe that my opponent is under investigation from the DA's office, and that is for filing false documents in the court. I don't know the status of their investigation, but I do know that several people were interviewed on him making false statements in court documents, and it's concerning his ballot statement. He apparently forgot to file his ballot statement, and then he filed documents with the court saying that part of it was that he was confused. And so I know that he blamed the registrar, and that was not factual. So that may be what he's being investigated for. That's the only thing that I can think of as far as corruption. If there is something there that I'm not aware of, bring it to my attention, because we're very, very strong on honesty, integrity, investigations, whether they're criminal and or internal investigations.
Thank you. Mr. Hirokawa?
Well, I hate to keep on repeating myself, which would be independent oversight. If you have an independent body monitoring the conduct, not only of the rank and file, but also the sheriff, then you have that independent evaluation in regards to keeping the community trust. In regards to the sheriff, the incumbent controls the documents. She's trying to place blame in regards to who should be monitoring in regards to the texting. Not being transparent and releasing some documents, not releasing all, to make sure that everybody understands the full weight of what happened in that case. So again, in regards to saying that I thought it was too severe, let's go back to sexual harassment. Too severe compared to what? That was the question. Compared to the sexual harassments of sergeants that had been accused and were guilty of sexually harassing subordinates, deputies. And what did they receive? Just days off. Versus the president of the union who was accused of not reporting the racist textings, that's what he was guilty of, received a demotion. Now, whether that was equal or not is beyond, it's not my responsibility. The sheriff hasn't responded or has not, says, I recused myself. She had the authority and the opportunity to fire. She didn't do, she says she recused herself. The buck stops with her.
Thank you. Next question, and we only have 2 or 3 questions left. Wow, lots of questions here. And some of them were kind of repetitive, so I blended them into others. But this one is, what would you do to ensure that non-citizen residents feel comfortable reporting crimes and operating with the police? And we'll begin with you, Mr. Hirokawa.
Again, there has to be mutual respect and mutual trust with our undocumented or documented immigrants in this county. It needs to come straight from the top. And that has to resonate to the rank and file, to the deputies, that we will not tolerate treating them with disrespect or singling them out because of whether they're documented or not. Allowing ICE agents into our jail and not resonating that message to the rank and file. I would have things in place to make sure that those people are held accountable, again, with oversight. As long as you have clear policies, then you protect them. We should all be concerned with the 2020 census and what the federal government right now is trying to do in regards to asking the question whether they're documented or not. That will discourage people and will not bring the federal dollars to this county in regards to that. The sheriff, as your elected sheriff, I will stand up for immigrants who are documented or undocumented, not to separate families and protect them. That needs to be very clear in regards to that. In regards to the issue of detainer, again, I'm in full favor of protecting the people and keeping ICE out of our jails. And in the public, only protecting those people who feel that they're being marginalized because they're not citizens. Here's the fact. They have constitutional rights. They have rights just like everybody, like we all have.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
So I think there's a lot of fear right now because of some of the audacious federal policies that we're seeing on immigration. And I think it's our job in law enforcement is to make sure that they understand our position. My position on immigration has been very, very clear to the community, to those people that we work with. And so even having our immigration fraud unit and reaching out to the community. Javier Becerra, the state attorney general, quoted me because we had one incident. Sierra Lamar was a young girl kidnapped and murdered in South County. There were a lot of farm workers in that area, so we really reached out to the farm workers. I actually went to some of the Catholic masses to talk about please trust us, work with us, which they did. It's those kinds of things that I think are really important. And with the Attorney General quoting me on the fact that we need the community to work with us to make ourselves successful, we will continue to support all victims, all immigrants, everybody who feels fear from any kind of unconstitutional federal policies. We are continuing to reach out to the community, and I'm very often in the community talking with people, but it's about building that level of trust and keeping that level of trust that we have currently with our communities.
Thank you. And this is the last question from the audience. And we'll start with Ms. Smith. What strengths and specific experiences make you qualified for this office?
I have a record of accomplishments, and I didn't hear the 3 things that he was proud of when you talked about his accomplishments. I get things done. I identify the problem, working with our team, that we're able to accomplish so much, and I think that that's really why we're recognized as one of the leading law enforcement agencies. My strength is tenacity and sticking to it and moving forward and recognizing needs and where we could go and direction. And also, if we're providing something that is not producing the results that we want, to regroup and to look at it again and to move forward with something that is effective, whether it's a crime prevention program. I'm also very, very strong on accountability and making sure that our deputies in the field and everywhere else are doing what they're supposed to be doing. I currently am in a master's program right now with the Naval Postgraduate School, and what I'm studying is hiring standards for police officers. We know that we've had bad cops in many agencies in the past, and there's never been really a comprehensive analysis of what makes a good cop and who should we not hire in the profession. So I'm getting another master's degree from the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey and looking at really hiring standards, because that's the way I think we need to focus for the future.
Thank you. Mr. Hirokawa?
So I have tenacity, but it's not going to take me 20 years to get things done. I will get them done within 4, if not 8 years, and then that's it. I will be mentoring, instructing, and leading the new men and women in the organization to take over, and not just say, look, I will continue on for X amount of years to try to accomplish the things that should have been accomplished in the first 2, if not 3 terms. It's about getting things done and getting things done in a very orderly and efficient way. My high points are going to be, again, communicating with you, coming up with solutions, and building those collaborative relationships, not only with the chiefs, but the crime victims and you, the citizens of this county. That requires somebody to step up and say that there's going to be change, and not to give you PR sound bites in regards to how that's going to happen, and then wait in 4 years and give you the same rhetoric in regards to how change is going to occur. So for John Hirokawa, I'm known for my honesty and my integrity. I've known that if I can't do it, I will tell you I can't do it. That's why the Blue Ribbon commissioners came to me, listened to what can be done and what couldn't be done, and not just give them the lip service that that's what's going to happen, and then not fulfill the promises that were being made. Why do you think there have been 3 inmate hunger strikes?
Thank you, candidates. That concludes our questions and answers, questions from the audience and answers from you. Thank you very much. You might want to take a deep breath now, because we're going to come to that very last statement that you'll be making, and you'll have 1.5 minutes to do this. And we'll be hearing closing remarks from each candidate in the reverse order. So the opening statement, Ms. Smith went first, then Mr. Hirokawa, so now we'll reverse that order. This is the question, and we'd like you to respond to it and tell us why. What question do you wish you had been asked tonight, and why?
I think the question that should have been asked, so why do you think you have the most integrity and honesty and transparency, and will bring reforms to the sheriff's office? Because I haven't made false promises, I haven't made false statements in regards on the campaign trail. I never said that the sheriff, as she has quoted, I've always been under budget, and then to find out that she's $150 million over budget. I'm not the one that says I'll be totally transparent in regards to the different issues and then refuse to release the documents to different organizations, including the Mercury News. So again, I fulfill my promises, and I think Can you trust John Hirokawa? I believe I just picked up Shannon Tyree, the sister of Michael Tyree, who's been monitoring about reforms. She believes that I will bring the reforms. I have the confidence of the civil rights group called Equal Justice Society and the president of that organization, Eva Patterson, and Judge LaDoris Cordell. These people believe in John Hirokawa, and they trust and have confidence in John Hirokawa that I have the integrity and to make the changes and reforms to the sheriff's office. With Michael Tyree's sister weighing in now, it should be apparent to you, as she's been monitoring what's been going on, that the current incumbent needs to be removed, and only you can do that.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
Thank you. I wish you had asked about who is supporting and who is endorsing, because I think that endorsements are so important, because these are relationships that you've built, and you've built a certain level of trust. I have really strong bipartisan support that are looking at my candidacy. And you know, that really speaks to trust. My opponent mentioned a really cheap shot a while ago about a 1992 investigation of me. I have all of the documents here where I was totally cleared on everything. I found them from 1992. But these people on the list, an endorsement is not done lightly. State Controller Betty Yee is endorsing me, Assembly Member Kansen Chu, Senator Bob Wykowski, Senator Jerry Hill. All of the Board of Supervisors who have endorsed are endorsing me. I also have mayors and mayor pro tems from Campbell, Cupertino, Los Altos Hills, Milpitas, Santa Clara, Saratoga, Sunnyvale, Montecito, Morgan Hill, Gilroy, Los Gatos, San Jose. But I also have the support of Chambers of Commerce and the Central Labor Council. They worked with me for a long time. I've built those relationships, that trust. I know I read the cities fast, but I think it's really, really important. I have support of law enforcement, and not only Chamber of Commerce, but the Central Labor Council also is supporting my candidacy.
Thank you. That concludes our forum. I would like to really thank the candidates. It's been a long forum, almost an hour and 20 minutes to be sitting up here and fielding many, many questions. So I'd like to thank you again for participating. I would also like to thank all the volunteers who have made this possible, the 5 leagues of women voters of Santa Clara County, including the timers, question sorters, program planning, and setup. I'd also like to give a special acknowledgement and thank you to the City of Cupertino for the use of this incredibly wonderful facility. Lastly, audience, please do remember to vote on November 6th. And for more information on candidates and ballot measures, go to votersedge.org, the League's online ballot information site, and pick up other voter information in the library. In the lobby. Thank you very much, and good night.